Monday night and Monday night, the dialogue with Dozell. We're here with you right now. We have an exciting show tonight. So much going on in the world, and the year just started. But that's all right. Hey, welcome aboard. Share out this program. Tell people it's over on YouTube so they can see it on the TVs also. Tell Paul, tell Saul, tell them all that Dialogue with Dozell is on. Go to dozelland.com. No, go to Dozellland right now. Check out the dialogue. What a show we got tonight. But more excited than the show is the guest for tonight's show. I have, and KD will be joining us a little later. Joining us right now is, and I still call her judge, just 300 votes or something like that. Just that close to being a Broward County judge, circuit judge. She's on the attorney Kaysia Earley is with us tonight, and also joining us shortly is Kelly Darren Davis. We all know him. He's a South Florida radio legend. It's Big Man Kelly. Hey, bring up attorney Earley, if you would, please. Hey, attorney, how you doing?
I am blessed. How are you, Pastor?
I'm great. I'm just so used to seeing so many photos of you over the last few weeks or so, riding the animals and just enjoying Jamaica. And
Listen,
it was as though we were there.
That was a much needed break. All this last year, it was campaigning, it was jury trials, it was court. So I needed to enjoy the fruits of my labor.
You took us all there with you, and that's what was so awesome about it. Thank you for being with us tonight. Tell us, everybody, Judge Earley Attorney Earley was with us not too overly long ago as we were heading to the election season, and just give us an update on who you are and what you do. You have a program of your own now. Tell us all about it.
Okay, well, I am a criminal defense attorney. I do practice both criminal, civil rights. I've tried over 100 jury and non-jury trials to verdict. So I am an experienced top lawyer. You see all those awards, okay? In addition to practicing law, I'm also a legal guest on various shows as a commentator for Court TV, Law and Crime, and NBC. And I basically provide insight to any current legal events, whether legal stories and topics. Most recently, of the 4 University of Idaho students that were recently murdered. They finally found the suspect, and he was arraigned last week. So, of course, as you know, previous political candidate as for Broward County judge for the 17th Judicial Circuit. So just busy all around. And I do have my ministry. I also do what's called a weekly wisdom for my clients who are incarcerated. I make sure that I feed them the daily word, inspirational and encouraging word to keep them sane in an insane spot. Because as you know, I was once incarcerated prior 18 years ago. So there you have it.
I mean, and I continue to be just amazed and fascinated with, as you recant where you come from and what you're doing and how God has just used you. And let me tell you, I was doing registration at her rallies. We kind of took over a bar on Friday night. And
karaoke, you remember, I missed that.
I do. And, you know, every time I thought about getting up there singing, I hear guys like, I hear you and others say, no, I better just kind of stay out of that. That's not my, I let the singer sing. I just do what I do. But I just never ceased to be amazed at and as you see it flows forth now, just a total spirituality that came forth from you. And it's not something that's rehearsed or learned. It's in you.
It's definitely in me because I know where God has brought me from. And just as you stated, and by the way, I want to thank you for registering voters. For those of you who are listening, you were an integral part of my campaign because I had these karaoke nights, and not only was it entertainment, but it was also educational. You provided the access and the ability for those who were not registered to vote, or if they were registered, to update their registration. So I want to thank you for that. But just as you stated, I made sure wherever my platform was that I spread the gospel, because that's who I am. And what's in you will ultimately come out. You don't just preserve it for Sunday mornings. It's everywhere. It's here on this platform. And even on my personal social media, I definitely spread the gospel, because that's what keeps me sane in such a stressful job as a criminal defense attorney.
And your pastor and his wife were always there, and brothers and sisters from the church. It was just a real family atmosphere. And I almost got locked into Friday nights, man. We going out to the karaoke, and the thing that's still bouncing in my mind is vote early for Earley.
Vote early for Earley. Listen, that slogan can attach to any political platform. It's the judge. It can attach to my political future aspirations for Congress and even the White House. So vote early for Earley. That's not going to die. We just took a break from that for now.
So Dozell, you got it. You are hearing a future president who's being interviewed, who's on the panel right here tonight in Dozell Dialogue with Dozell. We're gonna get into our conversation, but I want to kind of put this out. The 6th was Thursday, wasn't it? Yes. Let's see. The 6th was Thursday.
The 6th was Friday. That was my baby's birthday. He turned 18 years old.
You talking about the football player?
The football player. Listen, I'm officially welcomed into the club as a mother of an adult child.
Congratulations,
so,
Mom.
I'll definitely remember that day, because he reminds me. He's like, Mom, really? They really had to mess up my birthday? So 2 years from the date of that insurrection, and here we are. And what has changed, and has anything changed? Right?
Well, what has happened is that if he didn't, he should be getting his voter registration, the actual card, now that he's 18.
Of course. So, and you know what? Guess who registered him to vote? So listen, so he should be expecting that. He literally turned 18 on Friday, and we take our voting rights very seriously in this home.
Yes.
If you don't vote, you do not have a voice, and how dare you complain if you fail to act. So he's excited. So I can't wait until he gets it, and he's so excited to vote on this upcoming election.
So awesome, so awesome. Well, turning Earley, our panel, our discussion, our topic tonight is, after the insurrection, is our democracy, 2 years after the insurrection, is our democracy stronger or weaker? And the way I wanted to look at this before we got into the actual question, the first thing I wanted to say is, I think we need to investigate and be able to confirm that there was actually an insurrection. What say you?
Even with an investigation, even with all the evidence, I think it's too obvious to say that there was not an insurrection, right? So before we even utilize this terminology, you have to understand or define what an insurrection is. And basically, it's an organized, violent revolt against democracy. Or in this case, it was an organized, violent revolt against an organized government. This organized government was the past election. So how far have we come, and whether or not we're stronger or weaker? I like to answer that question like in the medium. We're experiencing growing pains, because I believe that the country had the opportunity to see that terrorism is not always foreign. And in this case, I look at it as domestic terrorism that the country had to face and must fix. Because if not, then what we call a democracy will constantly be tattered. It will be beaten until we do not have a democracy. So are we stronger or weaker? We're growing. we're experiencing growing pains, but 2 years is definitely not enough time to fix what the world, not just the United States, but what the world had the opportunity to witness from the greatest country in this world.
Well, and I'm sure you've seen, we woke up this morning to the news that in Brazil, a similar insurrection had taken place, and the correlations are ever so close. Steve Bannon, who was one of the architects of the one on January 6th of 2021, was one who was given advice, and the father, the ousted president, kind of like our former guy who was defeated by the will of the people at the ballot box, used the same game plan to simply say that there was contamination of the balloting system and that it was an illegal election. The only difference in this one is that they didn't actually go to try to stop the vote from being ratified. This time it was long after the vote and the new president was in office, and they went to the Supreme Court in the presidential palace, but on a Sunday as opposed to a day of business. What's your take on what happened there?
Well, first, do you see the similarities? It both started with the words. It started with, well, in our case, the First Amendment right? Because we must understand that our First Amendment right is not absolute. There is some restrictions to your First Amendment right. And even in law school, we learned about this terminology of clear and present danger and inciting violence. So there are some restrictions to what someone can say, because if you can scream, fire in a crowded, dark movie theater, what will happen? Well, of course, panic ensues, and then people will get hurt in their attempt to escape this fire. But then, oh, it was just a joke, or, oh, I didn't mean it that way. So this is what happened with this insurrection. Words were said about, this conspiracy theory that this election was stolen, and it incited violence. But again, it was organized, because some people wanted to say that, oh, it was a spirit of the moment, it was the heat of the moment. Really? If you break down how well organized January 6th was, to the point where these Proud Boys or these white supremacist organizations even knew the layout of the Capitol, that's not a spirit of the moment type thing. This was well planned, and unfortunately, it all started with these conspiracy theories that this election was stolen and that it created that clear and present danger. And look at the collateral consequences that occurred from this day. We know that there was death, there was monetary collateral consequences, over $1.5 million of damage, because again, it was vandalism, it was looted in the Capitol. And then we're not even talking about the cost of prosecution, because hundreds of people were prosecuted, right? All because of this conspiracy theory that started with words, and similar to overseas. So it has to be some restraint, because no constitutional right is absolute.
So that example that you use is a well-chronicled one in the police academy, and actually that was one of the first things we learned on the streets. No, we don't have absolute freedom of speech. There are limits. Somebody yells fire in a theater, that's grounds for you have abrogated that right. So I think we've done a good job of accepting and acknowledging that there was in fact an insurrection. Hello, Curtis, how you doing, bro? KD gonna be coming on shortly, I think. As a police investigator, you always you overkill, and I'm sure you have to, because you have to go and unravel all of the evidence that police have to amass to successfully prosecute a case. And I'm beginning to think more and more. So Merrick Garland and his staff has now been handed over what I think was a masterful amassing of evidence by the January 6th Commission. And I'm beginning to worry now that time is going to run out, and 2 years are going to give out, and God forbid somebody else from that red party gets in office, that whole thing will be shut down, and all of these, especially all of the federal charges against the former guy are going to be ceased. Hopefully, Georgia and some of New York's will keep their prosecution alive. But I just think, and I guess here's my concern: lives were lost, as you indicated. People are hurt. People are going to jail for 20 years. Proud Boys for being a part of that statute. I'm just wondering, how do you just totally escape that? How do you escape that? And I know the Attorney General is being extremely cautious because of the political ramifications, but I think the wrong signals are being sent, and I don't see how even a Republican House could say, let's let that go. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, it's unfortunate because from a personal perspective, let's just say even 15 to 20 years prior, when you thought of the Republican Party, you thought of conservative. But now, present day Republican Party, you think, you know, racial tensions, you think of the Oath Keepers, you think of these Proud Boys and these conspiracy theories. So I believe that I have hope, number one. You mentioned that, is there a possibility that, okay, we already been 2 years out and nothing has happened other than the prosecution of those involved in this insurrection, and whether or not 2 years, additional 2 years may go by and nothing else will happen. I refuse to believe that. I do believe that we, the American people, will continue to make sure that the government and those people involved are held responsible, whether they were involved or had any organized effort in this insurrection that happened 2 years ago. So I don't believe that 2 years is sufficient time to not only thoroughly investigate, but just as you stated, it's a lot of information. What we saw was just a surface. It's a lot of information. And I do believe that those people who were involved in this organized crime will be properly prosecuted. And no one is above the law. And I take that very seriously as a criminal defense attorney. You know, when I'm prepping my cases and I subpoena law enforcement and they come to my deposition unprepared, you know, I'm going to file a motion for rule of show cause, because not only did you waste my time, just because you're a law enforcement officer does not put you above the law. So congressmen, all those involved, I have hope and faith and believe that this will not die, because this can't happen again.
Speaking of law enforcement officers, retired GSO investigator KV, who's my partner in crime in this show. He's my youngest brother. Just celebrated. He's in the part of the 60s Club. KV, what's up, man?
Hey, dog, what's happening, man?
You got it. This is almost and soon to be Judge Earley. She ever so close to being elected as a circuit judge down here, and she's with us today for this discussion. I want to ask you, I think that was what you just said was key. What is the danger of allowing something as dangerous as an insurrection to go unnoticed, unpunished, or untouched?
You asking me that?
Oh, I'm asking. Well, I was asking Attorney Earley, but certainly you can.
Oh, I thought you was asking our guest. I thought you want to answer that, KB?
Go ahead. I'll go after you. Ladies first.
Well, first the date. Why? Thank you. Well, we have a gentleman in the house. Come on. The danger again is our democracy. We don't live in a dictatorship, right? So we have to protect the democracy. So we can't let it fall in the hands of a few radical racial people who refuse to believe the obvious and that just go ahead and continue this conspiracy theory. We also have to protect the voting rights, because these select few, the Proud Boys and all of these racial groups, they were trying to restrict voting rights as well. They're trying to place fear. Fear is what triggered this insurrection, because you had a big guy, you know, these conspiracy theories were being repeated, then they were being believed, then they were being acted on. So it's very important that we protect our democracy, we protect the rule of law. And it's funny, it's ironic but yet hypocritical that you had our former president state that he was tough on the rule of law, but yet allowed democracy to fall in the hands of these extremists. So it's very important that we protect democracy.
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying, and I also want to say, as a former law enforcement officer, I'm friends with a lot of the guys that I work with on Facebook, and it amazed me after retiring how those guys spoke up for all the insurrectionists and everything. You know, I'm talking about some of my white brothers. They spoke up and defended those guys instead of saying the right thing and saying that they were wrong for storming the Capitol the way that they did, and tore up the building, that, you know, historical building and all that. And for no other reason, they were wrong for doing that. You know, first of all, they were wrong for doing that, but the reasons behind it was just corrupt to me, you know. So, but I think that and I know I came in a little bit late. I was working with one of my little mentees. One thing about the question, are we stronger now or weaker? I can't really answer that. I really can't answer that, because since you just said that about the Proud Boys and all that, trying to do fear in people. The Proud Boys just were here in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago. They had a restaurant that caters to our gay community, and they had some kind of show that they would have a drag queen show or something, and the Proud Boys showed up there and first sent them letters saying they better not have the show. And then they said that they were going to be in town to see that they don't have the show. And then they actually showed up and protested. But JSO sent plenty of officers over there to make sure that, you know, that they kept the peace, and that they didn't come here showing their butts. And most of these groups know if you come to Jacksonville with that, JSO gonna get you. So they came here and they marched in front of the protested in front of the club. But these groups are nothing but trying to instill fear into people, and that's the thing that really burns me. You know, that's what really gets me. They just trying to instill fear in people, and that's just, you know, that's what they did back in the slavery days. You know, you look at what's the city that blacks had back then that they went in and burnt it down, and
Tulsa.
Well, the one in Tulsa had Rosewood, the one here in Florida, and you know, see blacks start getting prominent, and they go in and just burn the city down. You know, so. That's what gets me most, is just instilling, trying to make people scared of them, you know. So,
What Kim, you said how surprised you were to see former law enforcement officers, and man, it really takes everything to keep my mouth bridled on Facebook when I see some of the stuff that, and a group of guys that I serve with, they tend to be, you know, real far right, and one of them was referring to the minority speaker of the House, and they referred to him as a commie racist. And it took everything. I started responding. I backed off, and I wanted to go back. Since we started the show, I kind of, you know, stayed away from that. But I used to get right into that stuff, and it took everything in me to say, just tell me how is he a commie racist? But that's what we have to do. What's surprising to me is, Kim, you said your law enforcement community, and Attorney Earley, you said that the Republican Party years ago was that law and order party, and we know that wasn't too long ago.
yeah.
Is it that democracy has diminished in these people's eyes, or is it situational? I'll use it when it works for my benefit, but for the long haul, if it means that it's not helping get my guy in who duly lost an election, then down with democracy.
You know what I truly think it is, and I'm always have to speak the truth, no matter what platform I am on, because it's. I believe that Trump made it possible for people to be comfortable in their racism and bringing it to the forefront, and utilizing law and order, or utilizing the Republican Party as, I guess, a cover, because you have this president who was unpolished. I mean, he ran on a platform of getting rid of the government or people who were still in the government. And he allowed people to perpetuate this cycle of violence and racism and never called it out. Even with, look at what happened on January 6th. I mean, to me, it was this silent dog whistle, and his followers continued to follow until destruction fell on the face of the Capitol. And there was no punishment or immediate punishment, but he was allowed to perpetuate this cycle of violence without being checked. And I think that's what the problem is. And now we're dealing with what he was allowed to do for years. And I don't even think it had anything to do with the Republican Party. It had everything to do with Trump being in power and going unchecked. And that is a problem. I mean, we live in a democracy with 3 different branches of government. So there's no particular branch that has absolute power. And until we elect people in office who's willing, whether Republican or Democrat, who's willing to stand up to and speak out against these domestic terrorists, it's going to perpetuate and continue this cycle of violence. I don't think that we've gotten far enough in 2 years. I believe that there should have been laws in place right immediately following that, because hello, we have an election coming up, right? So next year we have an election. So is it going to repeat itself if he has these conspiracy theories again? So I'm just concerned that we allowed this position of power, being the president, to go unchecked because of his authority, and this was the end result.
Hello, LaToya. We're going to read the conversation. You want to take a second and just hear a word from our sponsors and see what we got on tap for tonight's break. And we'll be right back with the dialogue. That be them. GoGigaWorld.com. All of your virtual needs, they got them. Web posting, web printing, web production. Hey, they got you. They didn't just pop up in the pandemic. They got stronger, but they are still with us, and they got all of your needs. And they're going to come out. We're going to be talking about some great things that they have in tap in the very, very near future. That's GoGigaWorld.com. So with all of the shenanigans that have taken place, and ironically, they took place on the 6th of January, that was a pivotal date in Washington, D.C., and you all know what I'm talking about, it would be very easy to pull that dang dog or that, are you serious, out my back pocket. But tonight, there's a more serious issue, and so we have a shout-out. And tonight's shout-out is to on many staffs. We were finishing a program last week when I happened to look up at the monitor and saw that there was an injury at the long-awaited Bills and Bengals game. And then while talking to the production team, I looked up and said, oh my gosh, there's an ambulance on the field. You don't see that too often. You see a stretcher, but not an ambulance. And then we saw guys crying, and we ended the production right then and there to go into what was going on. Number 3 for the Buffalo Bills, Dylan Harrelman, as you saw, he went down with cardiac arrest in the middle of the game on last Monday night, live for the entire nation to watch. But what happened since then was nothing less than amazing. Shout out, number 1, to the Buffalo Bills medical staff, to the trainers. You saw the head trainer. Shout out to all of the trainers. Shout out to the doctors who were in place per rules of the NFL, and Kim can talk more about that. Shout out to the immediate response of everybody. Cincinnati Hospital, University of Cincinnati Hospital, just a shout out to all of you that we have a very different result than what very easily could have been on last week. We shout out the players and everybody who responded so quickly, who let everybody know exactly what was going on when they saw it was not just an ordinary football injury, but they saw a person going down with their eyes closed and for all practical purposes, gone for a matter of minutes. We saw them responding quickly. They called the medical teams. Their response is what caused very likely for us this day to have a very different outcome. We shout out the players. We shout out everybody involved on the scene and everybody subsequently at the hospital, the doctors, everybody who made this thing come out quite differently. We shout out the leadership, the coaches, Buffalo Bills coach, the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Hey, we shout them out that after Hamlin was injured, they showed what leadership is all about in the midst of a severe crisis. I was hoping we could have had a shot of them behind the scenes talking to the league personnel down in the bowels of the stadium by the respective locker rooms. After dealing with their teams during the injury and talking to them and keeping them calm, leading them in prayers and leading them back to the locker rooms, they made the mature decision to say, no, heck no, there's no game tonight. This game is over. This thing has gone to a whole nother level. We shout you out, coaches. You get little respect, little credit. So many of you were let go today, let go just yesterday, when you've done a phenomenal job, even though you had losing records, you had losing personnel, but the overall leadership you gave, and certainly to these two coaches, we shout you out. You show what leadership and coaching and controlling men and being a leader of men is all about. You showed us all. You gave leadership to the entire stadium, and we just thank you for what you did. We shout out the NFL. The NFL made a mature decision when DeMar was injured. I don't know if it was the coach's calls to them, but the NFL quickly said, no more game. This game is over. And not only this game is over, you had the foresight to look further and to say that these two teams would not be playing each other because of all of the members and everything that was going on. We shout the NFL out. We shout you out. You had to be creative in the scheduling for the playoffs, as that game had strong playoff implications. Number one sports league in the world, NFL The Shield, we shout you out. We also take time out to shout out America. We shout you out. We forgot about everything. Teams, rivalries, competitions, we shout about. We forgot about color. We forgot about age. All of those things went out the door, and we came together and prayed for DeMar Hamilton. We forgot about all of this stuff about you cannot pray. I saw somebody put a picture of Tim Tebow praying on his knees, been 10 years ago on the sidelines praying, and the grief that he caught for that. But America, you knew where to turn. You knew that there was a God. You knew that only God. In fact, after he was released, we started saying, but God. We brought that phrase back to the forefront. We shout you out, America, for getting down on your collective knees and praying for this young man, 24 years old, and we give God the praise. Listen, before we end this shout out, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans, before their game, and that game was for the playoffs, they gathered together and became one and bent down in prayer. Before we end tonight's shout out, we want to shout out DeMar Hamlin himself. We shout you out, bro, for your resilience, for your fight, for your push, for your resiliency, for your holding on. You showed us the best in the midst of a crisis. You showed us how to hold on to God's unchanging hand. And sometimes we say in the Black church, he may not come when you want him, but he's always on time. He was always on time. And you were an absolute an example of this. So we shout you out for your resilience. We shout you out for your humor, for your comments to your teammates, your appreciation to America, for your parents being there and just showing the strength that you showed through all of this. He showed strength. He was out, yeah, but he showed strength. He was not always out. And I got the good news that we were preparing for the show tonight that Damar Hamlin has actually been released from Cincinnati Teaching Hospital, and he is now back home in Buffalo. So we shout out the NFL, the Buffalo Bills, the Players Association, because you eradicated the rules and you're making it possible for him to get his entire salary. And we're praying that somebody is going to make sure not only is he going to get the $3.4 million of his contract, but that we're able to take care of him the rest of his life. We shout you out, America. We shout you out, coaches. We shout you out, players, medical personnel. We shout you out. We shout you out, Damar Hamlin. We're back on the dialogue. That was long, but we just thought that you don't get those miracles that often, and when you get them, you have to take time to shout them out, and that's what we did. I don't know where KV went. So we were talking about democracy and America's situational care for it, a need for it. Is that what we have evolved to? We'll put it on the shelf when it doesn't fit our needs or our narratives, and we'll bring it back when we want to keep the everybody and everything in order. Is that how this works?
Unfortunately, it appears to be that way, but I also know that there are good politicians in Congress right now. We recently had an election, a local election here, where we voted in a congresswoman and local elections, which, by the way, is very important. Oftentimes we think, throughout my election, I was campaigning and I came across potential voters, and I was running in an off election, and I kept hearing some of the voters say, oh, I only vote for the president, or only when the president runs for office. We have to understand that our local elections are the most important elections because it affects us personally, directly. So I do believe that there are good politicians in Congress right now. And as we are approaching this upcoming election, it's important that voters become informed and educated voters and don't just vote down that ballot box. Make sure you research who you are voting into office. And if we continue to be educated and informed voters, we can make that shift. But I do believe that there are current politicians in office right now who, when it's convenient for them, they utilize the quote unquote principles of the Republican Party. But when it's not, they remain mute. You have to pull out an explanation or pull out some form of statement that they denounce racism or denounce these white supremacist groups. So I believe we need some strong-minded congresswomen and men that are willing to stand up to these bully tactics that's trying to instill fear in our democracy. That is the only way we will preserve the rule of law if we protect the rule of law.
Attorney Earley, what really bothers me about this, and this is a very relevant question, is our democracy stronger or weaker? What really bothers me is that we bought into a democracy. We bought into it. I don't know, and I know you were raised down here, was raised in Jacksonville, but during my era, and I'm a few days older than you, there were courses that were, everybody had to take a course called ABC, Americanism versus Communism. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got to the 11th and 12th grade, they included that curriculum, with the core of that curriculum, into a world history class. So I didn't have to take that specific class only, but that was, believe me, it was a major part of that. And so we decry anything other than democracy. And we are the lead. Listen, we market our democracy like nobody else. We market it. We proclaim it to be the best. We buy into it. We're indoctrinated into a democracy. Why is it that the selfish needs, and what bothers me about this whole, and I live, I remember the Reagan revolutions of the 80s and all of that. But what bothers me, what happened in 2016 and is continuing to happen, is that America, it's not just a segment. We saw the clown show in in Washington this past weekend, and I'm sure we're going to get to that before we get out of here. But it seems that America has said, okay, we'll if my candidate doesn't get in, we'll say he or she was robbed of the election. We'll find any excuse to do it, and we'll tug away and pull away the democracy that all of us have bought into from a young age. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that that's what we do. So I'm just saying, is it worth fighting for? Where are we going from here? We supported a president, and it's not just 30% of a block, a voting block that follows him. It's a whole nation that, you know, it's a whole nation. If you look at the map, and now granted, when a presidential election takes place, you can look at the United States map and you can color in the red state, color in the blue states. There are a couple purple states that have a question mark on them, which ultimately make the difference. But it starts out that day. Steve Konecki can go to his big board, and he already got those figures in place. Yeah. But now, there were principles in the 80s during the Reagan Revolution. I didn't buy it, I didn't like them, but at least you could say there were principles. Now, it's just you follow a man who likes being a dictator. He loves dictators, and he will lead as a dictator and will be president for life if he could. He gets defeated, and he says that the election was stolen, and January 6th is what resulted. Do you see, we lost some lives, but do you know how catastrophic that could have been? Nancy Pelosi, if they could have gotten their hands on her, Mike Pence, and even to this day, he still won't fully denounce it for whatever. He's not going to be the Republican nominee. He might as well speak out. What do you think America is it beyond repair?
I'll never give up hope, and never stop fighting. That's the most important thing, and it goes back to my vantage point when I was running for politics. It just opened up a whole new level that I was never privy to. I never understood the fight for power. Just like you said, Trump didn't take that position for the salary. So it was the most powerful position in the country to be the president of the United States. But as a mother of four, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that people fight for the position of power, and they lack the stability and the professionalism to carry out that responsibility. So it's unfortunate, but I do believe that we should never stop fighting to preserve our democratic values, our democracy, and to protect the rights of the people, and not just say, you know what, this is beyond repair. America is just beyond repair since the insurrection. No, it's not. Because again, it was a small group of people who tried and failed, and it's going to continue, but as long as we continue to fight back, putting up resistance, then they're not going to prevail. So it's never beyond repair, because I always say it's not over until it's over, but we have to continue to fight. And this is one of the reasons why, and I made this very clear, when I was running for judge, I ran because I got tired of seeing people in positions of power, specifically in Broward County. You're a judge, but you were so disrespectful from the bench. You lacked the knowledge for the job, but you were voted in by the people, because oftentimes it is a popularity contest. It's whoever knows you more, whoever has the most money, who can run the most ads, typically gets voted in. But I decided to stand up against that. And rather than complain about it, I ran for that position. And so we're raising up a generation that's not going to follow the ideas and principles of these racist ideas or these Proud Boys, white supremacist groups. So I believe that we should always fight and never, ever give in to fear and bully tactics of the select few.
We lost KB. He also does police interviews for one of the local TV stations in Jacksonville, and he had to go and do that. Judge, when you were saying that, you just reminded me when you talked about that disrespectful judge, which caused you to run. I tried my best to get her tonight, a retired appellate judge from Illinois Appellate Court, Vicky Wright, who, now just conversely, to show you the other side, the producer of this show, our oldest daughter, when she was, she had been driving along, and I think she may have gotten a ticket, moving violation ticket, and I accompanied her to court. We decided to go to court with it, and I accompanied her to court. And the judge, number one, was so fascinated, and this is shameful. She was blown away that a black man was there with his daughter. That we come in that, and we're with our children. But she was so fascinated with the way LaToya conducted herself, the respect she had for the bench, and to see a parent and child coming forward with that kind of respect. And she never stopped gushing over us. And so the ticket was obviously, it didn't stand a chance after that. But we remained friends. She just retired. I did my best to get her on tonight. She just didn't feel, after seeing the clown show the other night, she was still disgusted by it, and she thought it would carry on. But when you talked about the bench, I just think that we need to know that just like we have been stereotyped and had stereotypes placed on us as a race of people, we can't stereotype our Caucasian brothers and sisters, our Hispanic brothers and sisters. We can't stereotype one cop because of, all cops because of a bad cop, all judges because of a bad judge. Yeah. And I just want to kind of throw it out and give Vicky a kudos. What are the, and I was so glad you talked about the down ballot. We took a little break during the holidays. Now we're going at it in police talk. We say code 3, registering voters during this off year, because there are some municipal elections, and we're going at it furious and letting people know this is where these are the people you need to be electing. Everything else, it starts at the local level. What can we do on the local level to make sure that we prevent attacks on our democracy? Or what can we do to promote our democracy on the local level like this, in the state level and like this? What can we do?
Well, I want to share the responsibility for the voters as well as the local elected officials. So again, for the voters, it's their responsibility to become educated voters. Make sure you know who you're voting into office. When I was on a campaign trail, I went to every city, all of the 31 cities in Broward County. I was in the community. I was there. I was present. I made myself available. I was an open book. And as a voter, you have to make sure you go beyond what the potential candidate is saying, because of course they're putting on their best face. They're saying their scripted speeches, and you have to go beyond that. And then if you are elected as a local elected official, it is your responsibility to uphold that oath of office, because you're not going to do right by the people just to take that position for a position of power, or to have that authority, or to get that respect because you're the mayor. This is how we progress as a city, as a state, and as a country, is to, the responsibility is two ways: for our local elected officials as well as for our residents. And I can't stress it enough that every 2 years there's an election, whether it's for the midterm elections, or whether it's for the election that mostly everyone pays attention and follows, which is the presidential election. But be that informed voter. And just like you stated about voting down ballot, you don't know how many people fail to do the proper research, and they just may pick the first 2 names that are popular, and then they'll just go down and just, any, mini, mighty, mo. And that is just as dangerous as not voting at all, because now you're voting in someone that you did not educate yourself about. So it's so many things that we can do now, instead of just waiting until election season to find out who those potential candidates are. Stay informed with the news. Look what's going on right now in our Congress. It's chaos. It's embarrassing. So we have to continue to hold those people in a position of power. And then again, why are they getting reelected? Right? Is it name recognition again? Or are we failing to utilize our voice to vote them out just as well as we voted them in?
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to kind of close out with that. Turner Earley, your son is now 18 and he'll be heading to the polls. How do we keep him encouraged to vote after seeing that absolute clown show that there could be another name for it, but we wouldn't use that language. Uh, how do we keep and what's my how do I'm severely challenged with the people that who already are apathetic about voting, and I take the high school kids, unhoused population. I went down the other day and our church did a ministry to them, and someone said, "I got my card. I got my card." I was just so excited. I said, "Please vote. Please vote. Don't let that opportunity go by." But how do we keep them encouraged when they see what we saw the other day? Now, that party would say that was democracy in action.
Well, we have to continue to engage our youth. I'm noticing an uprising of our youth, and I'm so fulfilled by it. Even with the school shootings, you see that it's mostly the youth that are speaking out. They're not taking it anymore because evidently the adults aren't doing a good job at protecting youth. So the youth are more radical, but in a more positive way. They're more welcoming. They're more, they're putting up the resistance from the foolishness. But as a parent, I've made it very clear early on that voting was very important. But what I did not want to do is to push my thoughts, my beliefs strongly on my children and just make it a generational, okay, you're this because I'm this. No, I want you to have your own mind, your own set of beliefs, but I want you to know one thing. Whatever you do, make sure you vote. Because with that vote, you've now created that voice. And with that voice, we can now continue to keep our democracy together and intact. So the youth, I'm so proud of our youth to continue to make their voices heard in the ballot box. And for those who aren't old enough to vote, there's still ways to make your voice heard. We saw a few years ago where the protests, it was most of the youth that was speaking out. So I'm hopeful that we're moving and shifting in the right direction. And to answer the same question that I answered in the beginning, 2 years after the insurrection, is our democracy stronger or weaker? It's growing. And with growing, you have growing pains. And we have to continue to shift and speak out no matter what.
I am so encouraged by your positivity and your positive outlook. I love that half full, that glass half full outlook, because that's how we get things done. What's your outlook for what do you see happening these next 2 years playing out with the House?
You know, it's uncertainty. And it's uncertainty because we have a mixed bag of elected officials. In one hand, you have an elected official who is afraid to speak out. You have another section of elected officials who just go with the grain, you know. So there's uncertainty, but then again, like you said, glass half full. I do believe that we will rise as a nation, and that with this upcoming election, I'm actually excited because I've been doing some research about potential candidates that may be running for open positions in the House. And these candidates have shown in the past their grassroots to the community that if they are elected, that they may not just say, you know what, I'm just going to go with the grain. We're going to go with what's right. And I'm hopeful again with the House, but you know what? It's difficult to watch, okay? It's embarrassing. Especially the other day, I'm like, what am I watching? Is this CNN or WWE? Like, it's embarrassing. And then oftentimes, and I'll just say this real quickly, as an African American female in a white male dominated profession, I am presumed incompetent until proven competent. And I say that because it's less than 3% of African American female lawyers. And there's no way on God's green earth I could have acted out like that in court or on a House floor and not been reprimanded and on the front page of every news station. But when you see these white men acting as babies, ignorance that is going forward, you're like, again, it's going unchecked. It's like, oh, boys will be boys. Oh, they're men. It's no standard. Again, they lack civility. They lack professionalism. It's embarrassing. And I haven't watched the news today, by the way, so I don't know if they have any more smackdowns going on, but we just got to get the job done. And no one wants to work. Everyone wants to stand their firm ground on their opinions and not for the people. No one's working for the people. And that's why we're at a standstill.
I played a round of golf, so I haven't seen it, and I rushed right back to get ready for the show. My high school classmate Bernard Mason has commented. He's retired from the Air Force. I think I'm correct. He is a multi-talented brother, and a great. What I like about him is I like hearing his mind. He's a thinker, and but he has a heart to go along with it. And he points out so adequately that voter suppression and gerrymandering and all of those things are used to keep our votes down. And thank you, by the way, for the dialogue with Dozell. Every time we think about doing something differently, we get people like you to say, keep this forum alive, man. You got to do it. So I thank you. And I see Kelly about to pop up.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. We're just about to sign off. But I want to say this before we ask you to tell us about some of your platforms before we sign off. I want to say that, I just appreciate your outlook of positivity, us not giving up, us continuing to push on, Curtis, because we've got a generation behind us. Listen, using spiritual language, people poured into us. Yes. And now it's our time to pour into others, as she is her son and our grandchildren and everybody, to keep them knowing that I'm still going to say that democracy is still worth fighting for. Yes. And it's worth pushing. It's a concept, it's a novel concept worth keeping. It's a model government. People who live in communist blocks, they crave to be in what we take for granted. And we can't let, and I almost use some bad connotations about people, we can't let that element of people dissuade us from the democracy that we push to keep. Is Kelly coming up before we go? Because we have to catch him later. Kelly, we know you're driving. Say hello. We're about to sign off. So we're going to catch you on an upcoming show. I wanted to say this. Judge, you were talking about these upcoming elections and these off elections and stuff like that. Listen, we are killing it. We are killing it registering people and preparing for that, and reminding them that in 2008 and in 2012, we heard somebody say, yes, we can, and we did. We went to the polls. We went to the polls in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, a lot of us because of the vice presidential choice. So all I'm trying to say is it's worth pushing for, and we'll keep pushing people to it.
I agree. Go ahead, Kelly. And we're not fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for our future generations, just as you said. So we need to continue. And also remember, for every voter that you register, you also have these laws in place where someone's constitutional voting rights have been restricted because they're not a convicted felon. So we have to continue to register these voters, because for every voter we register, someone's voting rights have been restricted. So the fight always continues. We just have to push harder.
You know, when I'm registering voters, a lot of brothers, and it's a hard crack. They're saying, listen, man, I can't go to jail. I said, listen, man, if you straight up with me, if there's no sex crimes or no homicide ramifications, you good with this. But yeah. I know the intimidation fact is you and Kim both talked about fear. And so I totally get that. Judge, toot your horn. Tell us about your platforms before we get out of here.
Okay, and I know you're super, I know you're calling me Judge by Faith, but
I'm sorry. I
don't want to get in trouble with the Florida bar.
I apologize.
But my platform, again, you can find me on social media, Kaysia Earley, or Earley Law Firm is my law firm. as a criminal defense attorney, I know from a personal perspective of being incarcerated. So my heart is with all of my incarcerated clients who were not allowed or afforded a bond, and they're currently incarcerated awaiting their trial because you're innocent until proven guilty. And we'll talk about bail bonds at another segment because I totally disagree with holding someone in custody because they can't afford to bond out. So I'm Early Inspirations is for my clients who are incarcerated. And of course, I also have traps, which are your legal rights. And for those of you who would like a trap card, all you have to do is DM me. And then once you DM me, you get a trap card. These are your legal rights, and you put it in your visor. You get pulled over by the cops. You just read it verbatim. But most importantly, you should have it in your head. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about how we transitioned from the 2 years of the insurrection and what we can do as a people to put the responsibility on us, as opposed to saying, you know what, these politicians are making us look ridiculous. We can vote them out. We have power. The power is with the people. So we need to continue to put up the resistance, fight with peaceful protests and other means, and make sure that we're becoming educated voters so that we can create a better future, not for ourselves, because we have to be other people centered. We're doing it for future generations.
Attorney Earley, Kaysia Earley, we appreciate you so very, very much. We appreciate your ministry. We're going to ask you to come back and talk more about that. February, the dialogue will be doing 4 segments of African American, not history. We'll learn our history. We need to learn it on the fly. But we want to talk about how we can progress in today's society and beyond. So we're going to look at different things. Thank you so very, very much. We love and appreciate you. God, richest blessings.
Thank you for having me. God bless you all. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. To all of our guests, Bernard Curtis, Toya, everybody who has been on and helped to make this work for us tonight, we are so grateful to you. It's our team, More Go Giga Creations, you guys are just awesome. Dialogue with Dozell. We're back here next Monday night at 8 o'clock. We'll be here. We have an exciting topic. We're going to do some entertaining stuff next week. And we're going to tell you what the show is going to do as we lead into African American History Month. We love you. God bless. Dialogue with Dozell. We are out.